Malcolm Haden had built his empire the way most men build walls, brick by brick, year by year, until the structure was so tall he could no longer see the ground below. At 73, he sat at the head of a company worth $4 billion, with offices in 12 countries and a name that appeared in financial journals more often than in conversations between friends. He had no close friends. He had associates, advisors, and a personal assistant named Priya who sorted his mail, managed his schedule, and occasionally reminded him to eat lunch. Malcolm lived in the kind of silence that money builds around a man. Comfortable, correct, and completely hollow. The house on Haden Row was a mansion, really, though Malcolm called it simply the house, as if naming it something grander would require him to feel something about it. It had 14 rooms, a library he never entered, and a drawer in the study he had not opened in 31 years. He knew what was inside. That was precisely why he never opened it. It was on a Tuesday in November, gray and forgettable, the kind of day that blurs into the fabric of winter, that Priya placed an envelope on his desk, between two quarterly reports. The envelope was pale blue, handwritten, and addressed in the careful loops of someone who had learned penmanship from a patient teacher. There was no return address, only a name in the corner. Sophia. Malcolm stared at the envelope for a long time before he picked it up. His hands, which had signed contracts worth hundreds of millions without trembling, shook slightly now. Sophia was his daughter. She was 44 years old. He had not spoken to her in 11 years. He had not written to her in 15. He had sent money, dutifully, silently, the way a man pays a debt he is ashamed of. But money and presents are not the same thing, and Sophia had eventually stopped cashing the checks. The letter was 3 pages long and written without accusation. That was the most devastating part. Sophia did not rage at him. She did not list his failures as a father or catalog the birthdays he had missed, the graduations he had skipped, the phone calls that had gone to voicemail and never been returned. She wrote simply and quietly about her daughter, Lily, who was 8 years old, and had recently asked her mother why she did not have a grandfather. Sophia wrote that she had not known what to say. She wrote that she was not asking for apology or explanation. She only wanted Lily to know that somewhere in the world, a man existed who shared her blood, and perhaps, if he was willing, that man might one day become real to her daughter before it was too late. Malcolm read the letter twice. Then he sat in his chair for a long time, doing nothing, which was something he had not done in decades. He was not a man given to reflection. Reflection, in his experience, led to regret, and regret was not a productive use of time. But the letter had opened something in him that efficiency could not close, and he found himself thinking about the drawer. He crossed the study slowly, as if the distance were greater than it appeared, and pulled it open. Inside, beneath a layer of aged paper and a dried pen, was a single butterfly, a monarch, pressed flat and mounted on a small card in the careful hand of a child. On the back in crayon it read, "For Daddy, from Sophia, age 7. He had been in Singapore when she made it. He had been in London when she left it on his desk. He had placed it in the drawer, meaning to acknowledge it later. And later had become 31 years. Malcolm Haden, who had never cried in a boardroom, who had never permitted sentiment to interrupt strategy, sat down on the floor of his study, not in a chair, but on the floor, and held a paper butterfly, made by a 7-year-old girl, who was now 44, and he wept. He wept for the years he had traded for profit margins. He wept for the version of himself that had chosen power over presence, accumulation over affection, legacy over love. He wept because Lily did not know his name, and because Sophia had still written to him with kindness, and because kindness, he was only now understanding, was the only currency that compounded without taking anything from anyone. The next morning, Malcolm called Priya and asked her to cancel everything for the week. He sat down and wrote Sophia a letter, not about money, not about the company, not about plans or logistics or the future he could fund for them. He wrote about the butterfly. He wrote about the drawer. He wrote that he had been a man who measured everything except the things that mattered, and that he was sorry, and that if she would allow it, he would very much like to meet Lily. He signed it simply, "Dad," Sophia replied in 4 days. The letter was short. It said, "We'll be home Sunday." Come for lunch. Malcolm Haden arrived at his daughter's door carrying nothing except the pressed butterfly in his coat pocket and 31. Years of silence, he was finally ready to break. If this story moved you the way it moved us, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Kindness Corner Stories, where every story reminds us that it is never too late to come home.